I was 16 when my parents told me I was no longer their problem. They said I'd be back when the world broke me. They said I wouldn't survive on my own. But 10 years later, they were the ones knocking on my door, desperate, afraid, and hiding a truth that changed everything. My name is Lauren Mitchell, and the night my parents erased me from their lives didn't begin with yelling. It began with disappointment, which somehow hurt worse. We were sitting in the living room, the kind with furniture no one was allowed to touch unless guests were over. My acceptance letter was folded neatly in my hands, the paper already soft from how many times I'd unfolded it. I was proud of it. I shouldn't have been nervous, but I was. I got in, I said quietly. My mother didn't look up from her tablet. My father muted the television. Where? He asked. I told them. A community program. Emergency medical response. Not glamorous. Not prestigious. But real. Paid training. A path forward. My mother finally looked at me, her smile thin and forced. That's not college. It's still education, I said. And it leads to a career. I can help people. My father leaned back, arms crossed. You don't throw your future away to chase chaos. I felt my chest tighten. It's not chaos. It's service. That word sealed it. Service was what other people did. People without options. You're not becoming one of those girls, my mother said. Dragging bodies out of wrecks. Sleeping odd hours. Living paycheck to paycheck. I swallowed. It's what I want. Silence settled like dust. My father stood up. Then you're choosing a life we won't support. The sentence was calm. Final. I waited for the rest. For compromise. For negotiation. It didn't come. If you walk this path, my mother added, don't expect us to rescue you when it falls apart. I was 16 years old, standing in the house I'd grown up in, realizing love had an expiration date. I packed that night. They didn't help. They watched. I carried my bag down the driveway under a sky too clear for something so ugly. My father stood in the doorway, arms folded, like a guard ensuring I didn't change my mind. You'll be back, he said. They always come back. I didn't answer. I couldn't afford to. The first year alone taught me things school never did. How to sleep lightly. How to stretch food. How to ignore loneliness until it stopped screaming and started whispering. Training was brutal. Blood. Screams. Sirens. Death arriving without permission. I loved it anyway. Not the tragedy. The purpose. I worked nights at a gas station. Slept in a shared apartment that smelled like bleach and burned coffee. Every paycheck disappeared before I could enjoy it. My parents never called. I told people they lived out of state. By 19, I was certified. By 21, I was trusted. By 24, I was leading scenes men twice my age hesitated to touch. I learned how to stay calm while others panicked. How to read chaos like a language. How to make decisions that haunted me later but saved someone in the moment. I didn't talk about my family. I pretended I didn't miss them. Then the city changed. Funding cuts. Staff shortages. Burnout everywhere. I stayed anyway. Because walking away felt too much like going home. The call came on a rainy Tuesday night. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Something told me not to. Lauren, a woman asked, breath shaky. This is Mercy General. Your parents listed you as an emergency contact. I laughed before I could stop myself. They disowned me, I said. You should call someone else. There was a pause. They said you'd say that. My stomach dropped. Your mother collapsed, she continued. Your father's with her. He's asking for you. I didn't answer right away. 10 years disappeared into one sharp memory. The driveway. The door. The certainty in his voice when he said I'd be back. "I'm not family," I said finally. The woman hesitated. "He doesn't seem to agree." I hung up. Sat there in my car, engine off, rain tapping the windshield like it was counting something down. I told myself I didn't care. Then my phone buzzed again. A text. "Dad, please." One word. No pride left in it. I drove to the hospital. Not because I forgave them. Because curiosity is a powerful thing. My father looked smaller than I remembered. Older. His hands shook when he saw me. "You came," he said. "I didn't promise anything." My mother was unconscious. Machines hummed where conversation used to be. "She needs surgery," he said. "Insurance won't cover all of it." There it was. I nodded slowly. "That's unfortunate." He flinched. "I know we were hard on you," he said. "But we did what we thought was right." "You threw me away," I replied. Calm. Controlled. The way I spoke on emergencies. His eyes dropped. "We thought you'd fail." I looked at him, really looked. "And if I had?" I asked. He didn't answer. As I left the hospital, my phone vibrated again. A message from a number I didn't recognize. "If they've contacted you, it means you're finally ready to know what they hid from you." I stared at the screen. Rain soaked my jacket. For the first time since I was 16, I felt something worse than rejection. Suspicion. I didn't reply to the message right away. I stood in the hospital parking lot, rain sliding down my hair, rereading the words until they felt heavier than they should have. "If they've contacted you, it means you're finally ready to know what they hid from you." No name. No context. Just a hook buried under my skin. I drove home slower than usual, every red light giving my thoughts room to spiral. My parents hiding something wasn't shocking. What unsettled me was the timing. 10 years of silence, and suddenly secrets surfaced the moment they needed me. When I got inside my apartment, I locked the door and leaned against it, breathing like I'd just finished a call that went bad. I checked my phone again. Another message. "You were never meant to leave that house the way you did." My pulse jumped. I typed back one word. "Who is this?" The reply came instantly. "Someone who knows why they were so eager to let you go." I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father's face in the hospital room. Not angry. Not controlling. Afraid. That scared me more than his certainty ever had. The next morning, I went back to the hospital. My mother was awake. Pale. Smaller than the woman who used to tower over every conversation. She looked at me like she wasn't sure I was real. "Lauren," she whispered. I didn't step closer. "How long have you been sick?" I asked. She glanced at my father. He looked away. "Longer than you think," she said. There was something in her tone that didn't belong there. Guilt, yes. But also fear. I checked the monitors out of habit. Everything was being managed. Everything except the space between us. "Why did you really kick me out?" I asked suddenly. The room went quiet. My father's head snapped up. "This isn't." "I'm not asking as your daughter," I said. "I'm asking as someone who knows when a story doesn't add up." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "We were protecting you," she said. I laughed softly. "From what?" She hesitated too long. That's when I knew the message wasn't a lie. I left again, anger buzzing under my skin, and drove straight to work. Chaos was easier than questions. Halfway through my shift, my phone buzzed. An address. No explanation. I stared at it for a long time before deciding I hated not knowing more than I hated being manipulated. The address led me to a quiet neighborhood I'd never been to. Small houses. Old trees. Too peaceful for whatever waited inside. I knocked. A woman in her late 40s opened the door. She looked at me like she'd been waiting. "You look like her," she said. "Like who?" I asked. She stepped aside. "Come in, Lauren." I froze. "How do you know my name?" She didn't answer. Her living room was filled with photographs. Not landscapes. Not art. Family photos. My family. Except I wasn't in them. "I'm Claire," she said. "I used to be your parents' neighbor." "Used to," I repeated. "Yes," she said. Before everything fell apart. My stomach tightened. "What are you talking about?" She handed me a photo. It showed my parents, younger, standing beside a woman holding a baby. The baby had my eyes. "That's not me," I said automatically. Claire met my gaze. "No. It's not." My chest felt hollow. "You had a sister," she continued gently. "Her name was Hannah." The room tilted. "That's not possible," I said. "They would have told me." "They tried not to remember," Claire said. "Some people think forgetting is the same as surviving." She told me the story slowly, like she was afraid I'd break. A car accident. A drunk driver. Hannah was 3. My parents never recovered. They never healed. They never processed the grief. Instead, they redirected it. Into control. Into fear. Into obsession. "You looked like her," Claire said. "When you were little." Same smile. Same stubbornness. I felt sick. "They were terrified something would happen to you," she continued. "That you'd choose a dangerous life. That they'd lose another child. So they punished me." I asked. "For reminding them she existed?" "They loved you," Claire said softly. "But they loved you wrong." The words sank deep. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, surrounded by a truth that rewrote my childhood. Every rule. Every restriction. Every moment of distance. Fear disguised as discipline. Grief disguised as control. My phone rang. "Dad." I answered. "You knew," I said before he could speak. "You let me believe I was disposable." He was quiet for a long time. "We were afraid," he said finally. "That if we loosened our grip, you'd disappear too." "So you pushed me away," I said. "That makes sense." "We didn't mean for it to go that far," he whispered. "But it did," I replied. After the call, I sat in the dark, holding the photo of a sister I never knew. For the first time, my parents weren't just villains. They were broken people who broke me trying not to break again. And that realization hurt more than the night they kicked me out. Because now I had to decide something harder than forgiveness. Whether understanding someone's pain obligates you to carry it with them. And I didn't know the answer yet. Knowing the truth didn't bring peace. It brought weight. Hannah's name followed me everywhere after that night. In the ambulance bay. In the grocery store. In the silence before sleep. She existed now, stitched permanently into my past, and every memory I had began to shift around her shape. I stopped answering my parents' calls for a week. Not out of anger. Out of fear. Because once you understand why someone hurt you, the anger changes form. It becomes something quieter. Something more dangerous. Something that asks what you owe them now that you know. Work became harder. Every emergency felt personal. Every injured child made my chest tighten in a way it never had before. I'd always been good at compartmentalizing pain. Now the walls were cracking. On the 8th day, I finally went back to the hospital. My mother was stronger. Sitting up. Awake. Watching the door like she'd been afraid I wouldn't return. You spoke to Claire, she said. I nodded. You erased your first daughter. Then tried to erase parts of me. Her face crumpled. We thought if we kept you close, we could keep you safe. You don't keep people safe by trapping them, I replied. My father stood by the window, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. He didn't look at me. We should have told you, he said. Every year we said we would. And every year it felt easier to stay silent. Silence didn't protect me, I said. It just taught me I was alone. My mother reached for my hand. I didn't pull away. I didn't lean in either. I don't know what you want from me now, I said. Because I don't know what you're asking for. She looked at my father. He turned. We're losing the house, he said. The medical bills are too much. We've sold what we can. We're out of options. There it was again. The familiar shape of need. And? I asked. And we need help, my mother whispered. I studied their faces. Older. Softer. Still capable of hurting me. How much? I asked. They exchanged a look. Enough to ruin me if I wasn't careful. I stood up. I need time. That night, I pulled my financial records. I could help them. Easily. But the ease frightened me. Power has a way of disguising obligation as generosity. I called Claire. You don't owe them anything, she said without hesitation. I know, I replied. But knowing doesn't make it simple. No, she agreed. It never is. 2 days later, the hospital called again. Different tone this time. Urgent. My father had collapsed. Heart complications. Stress-induced. Severe. I arrived to find doctors moving fast, voices clipped, controlled. For the first time in my career, I was on the wrong side of the doors. I watched machines do the work I usually did. I hated how helpless it made me feel. When the surgeon came out, his expression was careful. He needs a procedure, he said. Soon. Without it, the prognosis isn't good. And the cost? I asked. He told me. It was more than money. It was a line. I sat alone in the waiting area, staring at the floor, and thought about the girl I'd been at 16. The girl who carried her life in a bag and refused to look back. Would she help them? Or would she walk away to protect herself? My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You don't have to save people who taught you how to drown. I didn't need to ask who sent it. I typed back. I'm not sure I know how to do one without the other. The reply took longer this time. Then choose the version of yourself you can live with. The words settled deep. I went to my parents' house the next morning. Empty. Furniture gone. Walls bare. The life they'd built stripped down to echoes. I stood in my old room. The marks on the wall where my height had been measured were still there. I realized something then. They hadn't just lost Hannah. They'd been living in fear of losing me my entire life. Fear had shaped everything. But fear didn't excuse damage. It only explained it. Back at the hospital, my mother sat beside my father's bed, holding his hand like she was afraid he'd vanish if she let go. I pulled a chair close. I'm not fixing this for you, I said quietly. Not the way you want. They looked at me, confused. I'll cover the surgery, I continued. Through a trust. Anonymous. No strings. No gratitude expected. My mother's eyes filled. Lauren. But, I said, holding up a hand, this doesn't make us whole. This doesn't rewrite the past. And it doesn't buy access to my life. My father swallowed hard. We understand. I don't think you do, I replied gently. But you will. I stood. I'm not your daughter the way you remember, I said. I became someone else while you were trying to keep me frozen. As I left, I felt something loosen in my chest. Not forgiveness. Acceptance. Of who they were. And who I had become without them. That night, alone in my apartment, I placed Hannah's photo on the shelf beside my certifications. A sister I never met. A past I never knew. And a choice I finally made on my own terms. But one question still lingered, sharp and unresolved. When the people who broke you are also the people who made you, how do you walk forward without carrying their damage with you? I didn't know yet. But I was finally willing to find out. The surgery was scheduled for a Thursday morning, the kind of gray day that makes time feel suspended. I didn't go to the hospital. I went to work. That choice alone told me how much had changed. Years ago, I would have waited in that hallway, heart in my throat, pretending duty was the same thing as love. Now I understood the difference. Love is chosen. Duty is assumed. I refused to confuse them again. The procedure went well. That's what the surgeon said when the anonymous trust cleared and the hospital called to confirm. My father would live. Recovery would be slow. Humbling. Expensive. But possible. I didn't feel relief the way I expected. I felt quiet. My parents tried calling after that. Not constantly. Carefully. As if testing a door they weren't sure was unlocked. I let most of the calls go to voicemail. Not to punish them. To protect myself. Understanding someone's pain doesn't give them ownership of yours. Weeks passed. Life settled back into routine. Calls. Sirens. Split-second decisions that mattered more than old wounds. I started sleeping better. Breathing easier. The truth no longer felt like an open cut. More like a scar. Sensitive, but closed. One evening, after a long shift, I found a package outside my door. No return address. Inside was a small wooden box. And a letter. Lauren. We should have given this to you years ago. We didn't know how. That's not an excuse. It's just the truth. Inside the box was a silver bracelet. Child-sized. Tarnished with age. Hannah's. My hands shook as I held it. I sat on the floor and cried for a sister I never knew, for parents who didn't know how to grieve without causing harm, and for the girl I'd been who thought survival meant never looking back. I didn't put the bracelet on. Not yet. A few days later, I went to see them. Not at the hospital. At the small apartment they'd moved into after selling the house. It was clean. Sparse. Quiet. They looked older than the last time I'd seen them. Smaller in ways that had nothing to do with age. My father stood when I entered, then hesitated, unsure if he should hug me. I made the decision for him and hugged him once. Brief. Controlled. My mother cried. Not loudly. Just steadily. Like something had finally broken open. I'm not here to fix us, I said after we sat down. I'm here to set boundaries. They listened. Really listened. I will stay in your lives, I continued. But not as your savior. Not as your replacement daughter. Not as the version of me you wanted. My father nodded. We don't deserve that. No, I agreed. You don't. That's not the point. The point was honesty. For the first time. We talked about Hannah. Really talked. About who she was. What she loved. The way my mother smiled when she spoke about her, even through tears. I realized then that grief had frozen them in time. They'd never moved forward. They'd just tightened their grip on the one thing they still had. Me. I left before it got heavy again. Progress doesn't need to be dramatic to be real. Months passed. The trust handled the bills. Quietly. Efficiently. Exactly as intended. My parents stopped asking for anything. That mattered more than apologies. One night, after a particularly rough call involving a teenage girl not much younger than I'd been when I left home, I came back to my apartment and stood in front of the mirror. I saw my mother's eyes. My father's jaw. And something else entirely. My own strength. I took Hannah's bracelet from the drawer and fastened it around my wrist. Not as a reminder of loss. As proof of survival. The final call came a year later. My father's voice was steady. Stronger. We're moving, he said. Somewhere smaller. Near the coast. That sounds nice, I replied. We wanted you to know, he said. Not to ask. Just to tell you. I smiled. When we hung up, I stood by the window and watched the city glow below me. I thought about the question that had haunted me since 16. Do you go back when the people who hurt you finally understand what they did? The answer surprised me. You don't go back. You move forward. And you decide who's allowed to walk with you. Sometimes, healing doesn't look like forgiveness. It looks like clarity. It looks like choosing yourself without becoming cruel. It looks like ending cycles instead of continuing them. I didn't come back begging. I didn't come back broken. I came back whole. On my terms. And if this story made you feel something, if it reminded you of a choice you're still struggling to make, take a moment to let it settle. Like this video. Share your thoughts in the comments. And subscribe to Revo Tales, because some stories don't just entertain us. They help us survive.